The World Health Organization, a corrupt enterprise that has a special affection for China. I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. The World Health Organization has a sort of angelic hue to them. A lot of people view them as an entity that can do no wrong. They're simply here for our best interest. They care about us a lot. They would never screw us over. Well, today, I'm going to prove that wrong. And I'm not going to pull some Alex Jones conspiracy theory out of a hat. I have facts here to convince you. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the National Post. They put out an opinion piece today expressing all the ways that the WHO has in fact let us down. This, right here, the headline, is largely correct, as you'll come to realize throughout our discussion today. The WHO, the World Health Organization, is responsible for international public health. Keep that in mind. They are a branch of the UN. That is their mandate. Now, the first issue that the article cites is that the Director General of the WHO, the head honcho, he doesn't even hold a medical degree. In fact, he's the first person to hold that position without one. His name is Tedros Ghebreyesus. He's a politician. In fact, he's Ethiopia's foreign minister, and he served as that from 2012 to 2016. Prior, he also served as a minister of health from 2005 to 2012. He did do some good work. He reduced Ethiopia's infant mortality rate, and he was a pivotal character in curbing the HIV spread, but at the same time, his career is tainted with scandals. David Nabarro, a global health expert, accused Tedros of covering up 3 cholera epidemics. Interesting, the theme of covering up is going to come up again in a little bit. So, Tedros passed the situation off as acute watery diarrhea 3 times when supposedly the facts pointed to another direction. It was supposed to be a cholera outbreak, an epidemic, but Tedros, as the leadership figure, wanted to sweep that under the rug basically. Now, let's fast forward to his Director General position at the WHO. In the early stages of the COVID-19 panic, he praised China's handling of the situation, even though they were actively arresting doctors for warning people about the impending epidemic. At that point, it wasn't too clear what was going on. Was it like a flu? Was it more deadly? How transmittable is it? What's really going on? Doctors had an idea. They had a feeling it was going to be really bad, and China put them in jail for saying that. Is that praiseworthy? Coming from the WHO? China did well to lock down their city, and multiple cities actually, with draconian measures, sure, but not the entire operation was commendable. There are some major flaws in the ways they went about doing things. In fact, it should be openly condemned on all fronts that China arrested the early whistleblowers. That's not something a health organization should be applauding. That is especially true when we extrapolate a little bit and realize that by China arresting these doctors, they may have caused traumatic damage to the way the virus spread. Having that info available from the get-go may have had tremendous ripple effects in curbing it sooner. Now, the next issue. Tedros, he opposed travel restrictions being placed on China. Why? Because he said they were discriminatory. Let's take that apart. Discrimination. What is that? Fundamentally, it's making a distinction between things. You discriminate between which cereal brand you're going to buy. The problem arises though when we do this unjustly or without good reason, like hiring one candidate simply on the sole basis of gender or race or any other irrelevant factor. Is it unjust to shut down travel from the source of a viral contagion amidst a time when it is clear that the problem is going to be worse though? The answer to me and to most logical people should be no. In fact, shutting down travel isn't really the entire answer either, as the virus still found its way around the globe, but shutting down travel and closing borders temporarily is a mechanism of slowing down the spread, thus flattening the curve. Isn't that what we're supposed to be trying to do? But still, we have the WHO advising against that. They're saying to just be kind to China, take no measures, it's not that serious, when in reality, it was the opposite. Are we really going to endanger the lives of people in the name of being inclusive to China at a time like this? It's simply not logical. You have to weigh the pros and the cons of action and inaction. The WHO failed in doing that. They had no idea what they were saying. The world ended up making up their mind though, eventually, regardless of what the WHO said, because nearly everywhere, travel restrictions were imposed. At some point, some places earlier than others, but still, that was the outcome. Is it still discriminatory? I don't think so. Here, we have a baffling but still clearly evident defense of China from the WHO. A defense that may have actually pushed action back into the horizon and further sped up the spread in the name of supposed virtue, of being inclusive and not discriminatory when action was being called for. How silly. This isn't the Human Rights Tribunal either. This is the WHO. What is their focus? Health and halting a virus, not virtue signaling, not trying to do whatever it is to cozy up to an authoritarian regime. On their priority list, health should be coming first and foremost, but that clearly was not the case. Now, moving on to another example, the WHO took eons to declare this a pandemic, even though it was clear for some time that this virus had already traveled around the globe. They were resisting, and finally, when COVID had infected 116 countries, they finally gave in and gave it that epidemic distinction. These people at the WHO were fighting over the definition of a pandemic. When do we call it that? Now? Later? Tomorrow? Today? This idiocy is revealed when we take into account the trajectory of the virus. Experts knew it was growing. Experts knew what was on the horizon. We had data that showed it was in many countries already. It had already spread and it continued to grow day after day. This is a bona fide pandemic. You could tell that early on. Yet, our top health organization was bogged down in useless semantic arguments. The benefits of calling it earlier versus later are clear. You're better off with a head start. There is no reason to prolong this as they did. CNN even decided to label it a pandemic before the WHO. That's crazy. Now, the WHO is responsible for international health. I will parrot that again. Instead, they repeatedly downplayed the matter with a clear China bias. I have further proof on this conflict of interest later on. But first, to summarize this issue, you have a Director General who has a shady history, to say the least, and there are questions about his qualifications. Should somebody with no education in the health space be leading the World Health Organization? I think you have a fair argument to make about that being inappropriate. You have somebody with no medical know-how, and they're running the most prominent health unit in the world. In fact, they're a politician, and they've been accused of downplaying things before, and here they are again, seemingly downplaying something once more. Is that surprising to us? Maybe, but maybe we should have foreseen this coming. 3 times the WHO has downplayed COVID under his leadership. First, they praised China amidst them locking up doctors. They were stifling freedom of speech, and it came at the detriment to the international community. People knew something. They were trying to share that, but for whatever reason, China wanted to save face and they put them in jail. That is not the appropriate response there. In fact, it's actually probably the worst thing you can do, aside from just killing them outright. Why would you stop somebody who is trying to help a dangerous situation? They were just trying to tell you information, but you decided to lock them up. The logic there doesn't flow, and of course China has an agenda behind that. Now, second, the WHO tried to claim bigotry for considering a shutdown of travel. They are trying to essentially keep flights going into China amidst the outbreak. In what world is that a good idea? This kind of has a touch of what I would consider new age stupidity, trying to place these odd values as the top of the hierarchy. It's almost similar to Kant, actually, and his philosophy is something like the categorical imperative. They have these rules that they follow. Number 1, be inclusive all the time. If you violate that, it doesn't matter what the ends are. If you're going to save lives, if you're going to curb the spread of the disease, you're still in the wrong. It kind of seemed like he was approaching it with that framework. We must be inclusive. We must not offend China. We need to keep these borders open, and we don't care about the outcome. Even though they are the WHO, the outcome from the health lens matters to them. That's what they're all about. It was a contradiction of responsibility there. Then finally, they sat on their hands until giving this thing its appropriate title. They let the virus just be a regular virus without the epidemic title attached to it for quite some time. Even CNN beat them to the punch, and I must wonder, how is that possible when the WHO is supposed to be our forefront of health-related defense. They should be declaring it what it is before anyone else does. They should be the ones administering a proper line of defense, but once again, they faltered. Even if you agree with some of these decisions here, and I don't know how you could, it's clear that the WHO has not acted optimally. There is major room for improvement here. They appear to be straying from their mandate. Politics is seeping into the equation. They're acting as a partisan party, actually. They're doing things in favor of one entity and away from their mission of international health. That's not what they should be about. I'm just left wondering, who really is pulling the strings here? It seems like China to me. The UN has been labeled incompetent for quite some time. Powerful countries can veto whatever they want. They can control certain functions of the organization. The WHO appears to be no exception given their affection for China. Are you not convinced yet? That's fine. I have more evidence to show you, and this next piece is actually probably the most damning. I saved the best for last. This, what I'm about to play, is quite possibly the most ridiculous interview I've ever seen. So it involves two parties. There's an interviewer, and Bruce, I think his last name is Aylward. He is the previous Director General of the WHO and current co-lead on the China Joint Mission. And the reporter asked him about Taiwan. He then proceeds to instantly, magically, miraculously develop dementia, and he doesn't know what Taiwan is. He continues to play stupid throughout. He ignores them, like his mic cut out, which it obviously did not, and then he runs away. It's such bad acting. And to give you some context behind this too and why it's important, China wants Taiwan to be considered an entity under them. China wants to behave as if Taiwan is just part of China. Taiwan, on the other hand, wants to be recognized independently. There is tension there, and it's political. It's somewhat similar to the Hong Kong situation. Hong Kong wants independence, but China wants to keep them absorbed. Taiwan's a little bit different because they are an island off the coast. They have a little bit more autonomy, but still, China wants them. They want all of that land for themselves. And without further ado, here's the audio. Listen to it and just feel the awkwardness.
Would the WHO consider Taiwan's membership? Hello?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No, that's okay. Let's move to another one then.
Right, because I'm actually curious on talking about Taiwan as well, on Taiwan's case.
We decided to give Dr. Aylward another call to follow up.
And I just want to see if you can comment a bit on how Taiwan has done so far in terms of containing the virus.
Well, we've already talked about China, and when you look across all the different areas of China, they've actually all done quite a good job. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting us to participate, and good luck as you go forward with the battle in Hong Kong.
As you can see, this guy here, Bruce, is a complete clown. He is a propaganda machine. Taiwan? Do you mean China? I've never heard of Taiwan before. Is that a new word? Oh, my internet is cutting out. Derp, derp. And then the reporter's like, okay, let me repeat the question. He's like, oh no, let's just skip it. Obviously, he heard the question and he's playing stupid. And then they call him back and he runs away looking like a fool. That is a representative of the WHO. And his behavior is actually very applicable to what's going on today. Diverting questions, acting in favor of China, and just being a puppet. He also isn't a peon. Don't consider him to be a low-ranking grunt. The man holds high status within the WHO, and that is how he behaves. Quite interesting, to say the least. It's clear there is an agenda here. So, why does it matter that the WHO is putting politics above their mandate? Because it's hindering our COVID battle. These morons are running around at the behest of China to the detriment of the international community. They are doing things to appease an authoritarian regime, and they're hurting regular citizens by not disclosing information, as I'm going to talk about. Now, aside from them just dodging Taiwan in that interview, Reuters reports that the WHO is not sharing coronavirus information from Taiwan either. Keep in mind, Taiwan has been highly effective at fighting the virus for a long time. Them and Singapore have been controlling the spread quite commendably, especially given their context, there's a lot to learn here. How did they have such success while being so close to the outbreak? They say they have really good screening measures and good measures to control the spread within the country. They're coming forward and they're saying, hey, we want to tell the world about this. We want to help you guys fight this virus here, and we have tackled it head on from the get-go, and we have results to show. Unfortunately for us, though, we have the WHO, which is busy blocking them for political reasons. The WHO is so silly. They're saying, hey, we don't want to hear it. We only regard China. We want to hear what China says. You're a part of China? They're going to speak for you. When in reality, these guys have their own story to tell, and one that is beneficial in terms of health. It's contradictory again to their mandate. Taiwan has come forward and accused the WHO of ignoring questions at the start of the outbreak. They claim it's a pattern of basking in risky behavior because of pressure from China. I am inclined to believe that is true. There is no reason why you would shun these guys outside of China telling you, hey, do not regard them as a separate entity. They are part of China. If you do not agree with us, well, there are going to be repercussions. And the WHO, being spineless, has crumbled at that pressure. Taiwan's foreign ministry gave a statement as well. They say the WHO needs to review and improve upon unreasonable restrictions imposed on Taiwan based on political considerations. Yes, they have to do that. Why are they even doing this in the first place? The WHO is corrupt. It's so obvious it hurts. Taiwan has given all of their information to the WHO, but they have never been included in their daily situation reports. Other countries are not getting the info that they need. Taiwan has also been excluded from over 70% of WHO technical meetings in the last decade. The WHO tries to lump them together with China in terms of data as well, which is not representative of the situation. Taiwan says that it's ridiculous because their spread is far more controlled. To take their data and mix it with China, it gives the impression that they suffered the same fate as the mainland. All the while, China has no say in their island's health policy, and Taiwan is doing their own thing. They are literally a separate entity here. They're not connected in any way, but the WHO, is trying to fabricate reality and make it seem as if it is. That's propaganda. That's nonsense, but still, they're complicit in it. This right here is baseline absurd. Insanity to the highest degree possible. Remind me again how the WHO is supposed to be looking out for the international community's health. They're playing politics to the detriment of everyone. It's clear here there is data that can help us fight this battle, that can improve our health outcomes, but they refuse to take it. Why? Because China does not want them to. That's insane. The entire entity, the WHO, is complicit in corruption. They are responsible for worsening the outbreak. They have an opportunity to make it better, but they don't take it. They need a serious reform. Free from the grips of politics, this is a healthcare organization, for God's sake. What are they doing? The longer we continue to believe that the WHO is this godly entity that can do no wrong, the longer we remain in darkness and the more terrible practices like this are going to manifest. So, where do we start? For me, it's pretty clear. You cut out the leadership. I want these puppets removed. I want any trace of nonsense political bias rooted out and destroyed. There is simply no room for that within an organization like this, and at the same time, it's clear who's pulling the strings. It's China. If there is any lesson to draw here, it's that China has a specific agenda that's not compatible with many other countries in the world. In what reality would it be okay to be influencing a unit to not share critical information because you have a beef with that party, because you want that entity, Taiwan in this case, to be part of your country, and because they refuse, you're going to hinder the rest of humanity? That's petty and it's nonsensical. The reality really is that China, and some other countries too actually, I put Saudi Arabia in there for sure, China, Russia, and even Iran, countries like this are not operating on a global mindset. They have an agenda that they're going to push forward, and we don't want them to be able to pull any strings because they will do it to the detriment of the world. As we move towards a more global civilization, the fact is we need a baseline of ethics to keep us all together. There has to be certain things that we can all agree on. We can't have these fundamental differences about the ways in which we operate in the world. Otherwise, we'll never reach a successful endgame. We cannot have one country okay with authoritarianism and curbing freedom of speech and locking up doctors because it's just not mappable onto the rest of the world. There is going to be an undying conflict there. There's going to be a battle to see who reigns supreme, whose way of thinking, whose philosophy is going to take over the world. Is it going to be the Western democracies or China's way of doing things, Russia's way of doing things, Iran's way of doing things? This conflict of ideas is ever present, and not recognizing that and not doing things to improve our own position, trying to establish a framework that's good for everyone, that's good for the globe, is a mistake. If we're trying to reach this endgame here, which I think we have to, viewing humanity as just one entity, we have to find a shared framework. And fundamentally, there are governments and regimes around the world right now that are making that hard to do. If we can't even be on the same page about fighting a pandemic, I don't know what the future is going to look like. There are some major changes that have to be made in the not so distant future. So, that now brings me to the end of our conversation for today. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and share. That'll help us grow. And you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at PerryPlatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.